Shedinja. The Shedinja really locks up a lot of the choices that Eisuke has to make, and then you can really predict and read the game plan. I mean, just looking at Shedinja, are you going to be able to hit it with a Dark-type move? There is only a chance that the Incineroar has it. Then you've got Fire-type moves. Yes, we know they exist on the Incineroar, and of course the Groudon potentially has access to one, but may not. I know some people have been giving it up in recent years. Flying doesn't look very likely on this team, you know, unless the Thunderous has gone for something, but I don't think it does. It just didn't seem that way. We saw very little of it. What else? We've got Ghost. There's a little bit of Ghost coverage available on something like the Groudon, but again, not top priority on a number of people's teams. And then last of all, the Rock, which the Rock side was confirmed. That is something that could be done. And then there's a couple other very light options that, you know, could get there. But really, you're relying solely on Groudon and Incineroar. As long as the Kyogre is fit to play, it's kind of game over at that point. If the Kyogre sticks around for too long, Eisuke isn't going to be able to get the Shedinja answers out, and Shedinja will run away with it.
Well, we also saw how much damage that Groudon took from a Kyogre Max Geyser in the sun. And so when you look at that, you have to assume that there might not be something like the Assault Vest that's keeping that Kyogre, the Groudon safe, excuse me. And so that means that you might not have as many of the coverage options that you just named to be able to deal with something like the Shedinja.
Really, I mean, the Kyogre clearly has the Assault Vest. Taking the Frenzy Plant like that, the only way you can do it is by carrying the Assault Vest. But Daniele is going to show off a little bit more of his team for us. Thank you very much. As we do get to see that Galarian Moltres come to the fore in the lead here in game number 2.
Yeah, and Galarian Moltres, we have seen a couple of different versions of it, as we have seen from previous formats, but a lot of the time, you know, that Galarian Moltres is going to have that Berserk ability, so once it gets to half HP, below half HP, then it will get a boost to its special attack, and on top of that, the Fiery Wrath is a really interesting move choice because of the flinch ability.
Being able to flinch has always been an annoying factor on any Pokemon move. How many years have we talked about and lamented the Rock Slide? Just bringing it back with Fiery Wrath is really annoying, and it does the same thing, right? It spreads out to your opponents both side of the board, so a nice bit of spread damage that can flinch. Doesn't get as much hate as Rock Slide did, and I think maybe if it does well here, it might start getting brought into that same kind of question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's still like a low chance to flinch, but it's still enough of that pressure that you probably want to consider it. But another turn 1 Dynamax here. It will be that Venusaur just getting the Gigantamax and starting to get some damage out again.
It has to do so much work, but it doesn't look like it's going to get paired up with the Groudon. I mean, now you're in a neutral weather. Probably feels pretty good about the chances to be able to deal with this. So a lot of work going in there, and you really want to get some damage down on the Moltres. It's kind of a tough one, right? With the Galarian Moltres, you do not want to activate Berserk. So you want to do about 40 to 45%, and then find a way to push that on to do the full 55 to 60%.
Well, sometimes what we were seeing as well with these Galarian Moltres, and I'm curious to see if this one is also one of those, is that you had some type of recovery berry. So once you got one Berserk boost, then the berry would activate, give you more HP, so you could potentially get a second one. But it looks like it's going to be a bit of a defensive game here for this turn 1 for Eisuke, which is going to shut off that move here as Incineroar gets to go for a parting shot. Great way to just start mitigating some of that damage.
I really like that play there. Making sure that the attack stats drop over onto that Galarian Moltres means that if it does hit with one of these max airstreams, there's more of a chance now that the Venusaur is going to be able to take it. There's also the fact that it pivots your Pokemon out very quickly, and you are able to bring in something different. So reveal of the Zacian here over on Eisuke's side is the Intrepid Sword boost. No shock there. That Intrepid Sword, you know, is going to help out, going to make sure that Behemoth Blade does even more damage, and maybe it's a case of just being able to double into this Galarian Moltres now, get a huge amount of damage down and deal with it, potentially taking that max airstream in the middle because of that earlier parting shot. So a lot to kind of make up for there, as yeah, Daniele does kind of what he, you know, wants to do, which, you know, it's kind of the reverse of what Eisuke did to him, right? Bring in the Incineroar, get rid of the Intrepid Sword boost turn 1. Yeah, turn 2, look what's happening. The Incineroar's coming in to deal with it, but I don't think that slot's going to be the focal point in this turn.
No, you're going to see that go right into the Galarian Moltres just to make sure that it survives. But look at that. It still does enough damage to activate Moltres' Berserk ability. So you will see that special attack get brought back up to neutral as the G-Max Vine Lash as well. Not doing a whole lot of damage, but you actually get that residual set up this time.
Yeah, getting that residual damage is absolutely huge and is definitely going to help out if this like Galarian Moltres doesn't have something like Roost. You see how impactful the parting shot is there. Even with the Berserk ability, it's still not enough with the max airstream to get that knockout, but it is going to start winning in that speed tie, and that's something that's big for the Moltres, right? As you mentioned at the top of the game, the Moltres is in such an awkward speed tier. Being able to get it out of there by boosting it up is absolutely huge. So I really, really like that. The change up, being able to cause some problems with it, it definitely helps. But this game, a lot better for Eisuke. Definitely staying in the game a little bit longer and being able to push a little bit more. But that's all it's going to be for the Venusaur. 1 G-Max Vine Lash was all it needed to get down before it leaves the field.
I think maybe Eisuke hoping that the Zacian is going to be enough to be able to switch it out here, but the Intimidate as well, just going to drop the damage once again, mostly looking at that Incineroar, but also acting as a nice pivot in case something else is going to come its way, but it's a free switch here. The Max Guard now coming through, but also the close combat. Ooh, that's
hello.
one that we don't see super often, but it softens up that Incineroar that once that G-Max Fine Lash damage comes through at the end of the turn, that should be a knockout, but looks like Incineroar is just going to knock himself out here from the residual of the Flare Blitz.
Yeah,
if that is enough, that's not a lot.
It's not a lot at all, but there is going to have to be the G-Max Vine Lash. It did 8 to itself, but the remaining 3 is taken away by that. Would have liked to get that targeting into the Venusaur. Second best option would have been the Zacian, and honestly the third best option is that Incineroar that does take it very, very nicely. So a good smart switch actually with that Venusaur leaving the field, and honestly this Moltres is getting dangerously low too. If it does have access to Roost, it needs to Roost as soon as possible. You know, the problem is it's not been able to do that yet, being in that Dynamax form. The Kyogre showing itself off pretty early is going to throw out that weather first thing, and that could mean there is an endgame where it's just going to be Sun the whole time. I think if Galarian Moltres has Roost, it has to Roost now, and that really is because otherwise it's just going to get knocked out by the Vine Lash Ferocious Beating between turns.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be the case. I mean, it's sitting at such a low HP that at the end of this turn, it would be knocked out. But you're also getting into a very dangerous position here if you're Daniele, because your Kyogre's on the field, and the fact that the Venusaur left, not only does that tell me that that Venusaur is trying to be preserved for later, but possibly, and more than likely, that Groudon is also in the back to be able to help boost that speed.
Well, assuming you can, you know, the Groudon's going to be in a really good position here. The Groudon definitely being saved because of the respect being put down onto that Shedinja. That Shedinja's not even here this game, so maybe something to look out for game number 2. But a nice fake out onto the Kyogre is going to help out. The Moltres didn't leave, by the way. The Fiery Wrath going into that Incineroar isn't going to be the biggest problem, but we know what happens with the G-Max Vine Lash. That's how important it was to Eisuke's strategy, and you can just see it taking a knockout here. It already took the knockout on the Incineroar, and it's going to put that Kyogre in range to get knocked out by something like the Frenzy Plan.
Yeah, not only that, but now this is the problem I was looking towards, is that Zacian has to come in, and Daniele is down to his final 2 Pokemon for this game too. So Eisuke has a lot of agency when it comes to what type of Pokemon he wants to put on the field to be able to match up against that. And if he does have that Groudon, then he can control the weather and make sure that those Kyogre's attacks are not going to be nearly as devastating.
If it's a Groudon, which it very likely will be, this game should be all but wrapped up, making sure you get a little bit more damage down onto the Kyogre. But at some point, you know, the end game board position for Eisuke is just Groudon, Venusaur. Venusaur obviously can't Gigantamax anymore, but that's all you really needed. The Kyogre's now in range to get a knockout on it by the Frenzy Plant, and then the Zacian can get cleaned up by something like that Groudon as well. So that pairing would really quite clearly seal this one. There is a world where Eisuke could also really try and lock up the game if he wants to get more Intimidates down onto this Zacian. Does still have all 4 Pokemon, so switches are plentiful. Yeah, the Incineroar leaving the field. Looks like we're going to be seeing that Groudon right away, so the sun is just set right now.
It is, and then, but also maybe, just maybe, we can find out a little bit more about how these Zacian are trained against each other. You know, which one is going to be just a touch faster, but it's the close combat from Eisuke's Zacian that will be the first to move. And the critical hit on top of it, though, still doesn't feel good. But the drop in defense and special defense maybe means that Zacian's Behemoth Blade is going to be a big one, as that's the target.
Yeah, I mean, a double drop from 2 close combats means this is an easy one-hit knockout. And the Kyogre's in a really tough position here. It's so low. Does need to connect to an Origin Pulse, single target in the sun. And then the Venusaur is going to be asked to do a lot of work as the sun remains. Honestly, that's a huge amount of damage, and that is kind of the drawback, in my opinion, of not taking the Assault Vest on Groudon. I've really come to like it. The Kyogre caught by the Divine Lash Ferocious Beating. It's not enough as it clings on, so this Venusaur is going to have to potentially throw something its way, or, of course, the Incineroar, which would be able to come in and catch it with a Fake Out. So the Kyogre, you know, as we know, over on Daniele's side, is the Assault Vest version. It took that move so well early doors, you know, would be able to say, you know what, you're just going to get faked out for the knockout here.
Yeah, because a Kyogre at this point, you can't go for something like the Protect, even if it was available, just because you're going to get knocked out by Divine Lash damage, and we also saw that it's probably Assault Vest, so it doesn't have that anyway. But, you know, Zacian here too, it's not going to be able to clean up both of these Pokemon since it doesn't have any spread type attacks, and you have two good targets on the field that you could secure a knockout on, but you can't use both. So Fake Out though, actually going into the Zacian here, and so Zacian going to flinch, but Groudon moving just a touch faster than this Kyogre will be able to get the knockout.
Speedy Groudon there, being able to play this one really nicely, just making sure it gets the knockout with the Shadow Claw. Well played on that one. I think the Fake Out would have been a funnier knockout, would have been more comical in my opinion. But at the end of the day, you know, making sure you get the knockout is all that really matters. As now it's 3v1. This Zacian, though, you know, is going to get Flare Blitzed at some point by this Incineroar. It's also going to get potentially caught by a Precipice Blades, but it gets to choose which one it doesn't want to get knocked out by.
Yeah, you don't want to give it too much agency as the Precipice Blades here will connect onto the Zacian, knocking it out and tying up this series. We are 1 apiece here in Swiss round number 4 between Daniele and Eisuke. Going into game number 3, we're going to see some intense stuff.
Really nice bounce back actually from Eisuke there. I think changing up the game plan significantly was really important. I like that the Thundurus didn't come because it felt like it had absolutely no agency in game number 1. And of course being able to get a